What is up? I wanted to talk quickly, and by quickly I mean 5 minutes or so, about the Duke at Syracuse game that's going to be played on Sunday. This is a huge game for both teams. It's ACC play. Duke sitting at 6-1, I believe. Cuse at 4-2. That's huge too. It has implications that are going to reverberate throughout college lacrosse. And you can tell I'm a Syracuse fan and a fan of the ACC in general by how important I'm believing this game is. It's not being played at the Dome as would be normal when Syracuse would host Duke. It's being played at CNS High School because the Dome is being used for girls basketball playoffs. They couldn't accommodate everything. No beer and no Dome dogs. That's going to play in Duke's favor because Syracuse won't have their well-lubricated fan base there to root them on as normal. I'm sure they'll be lubricated, just not quite as well lubricated. I wanted to rip through and go unit by unit and kind of break down why I think what I think at the end of the day in terms of who's going to pull this game out. So I wanted to start with the attack units, both teams' attack units. Shooting-wise, from an attack unit standpoint, Duke has Brad Smith. The edge goes to Duke. And Robertson and Manown are both quality finishers. Syracuse has excellent shooters and excellent finishers on their attack unit as well, but Brad Smith is better. He's one of the best shooters in the country. They have to get the edge. Off ball, both units are excellent. All three of Duke's attackmen are excellent off-ball players. All three of Syracuse's attackmen are excellent off-ball players. I give the edge, though, slightly to Duke because, again, Brad Smith. He can snipe from outside, and that's part of playing off-ball. How are you going to finish off-ball, and how much can you stretch a defense off-ball with your attackmen? And Duke does a better job of that. Dodging, it's a wash. Both of these units can dodge and go to the rack with the best of them for the most part, but neither are known for their dodgers. There's no true slasher on either of these teams, and so I call that one a wash. Neither unit excels in that arena, even though they're both proficient. Riding, both excellent riding teams. Both will make it difficult for the opposing team's defense to get the ball over midfield in that new 20-second shot clock era. In the end, attack-wise, though, I got to give the edge to Duke. They have the finishers on their side, and overall, just because I think Brad Smith is the best of all six attackmen that'll start this game, I give the edge to Duke. But legitimately, I think almost any lacrosse expert that wants to pretend they're being not biased in a decision like this, because I'm a Syracuse fan, I think I have to go with Duke because I think that's just the reality of it. Sorry to my fellow Syracuse fans. Midfield-wise, shooting, a wash. We have Brendan Curry and Trimboli on Syracuse. Duke has Nakai Montgomery, Seau. They've got a lot of guys that can light it up from out top. So, but both teams can shoot from out, have midfielders that can bury it from deep. Both teams have midfielders that can dodge. Both teams have midfielders that can, in that way, I think they're pretty even, especially in the shooting aspect of it. Duke plays a slightly more up pace style of play, so their midfielders, it plays well for them in terms of point production versus Syracuse, but either way, they both shoot well. Dodging, edge Duke. Duke just has slightly better athletes, and I think their experience plays into that as well. So I think from a dodging perspective, I think Duke has slightly more dangerous dodgers than Syracuse does, but Syracuse has excellent defensive midfielders. Both teams do. So far as I go down this, shooting, wash, dodging, edge Duke, defensive midfielders, wash. And I think that Syracuse's quality at the defensive midfield and depth at the defensive midfield is going to help them neutralize a little bit in terms of Duke's offensive midfielders because they are deep. That's where Duke's going to get the edge at the midfield, is they're definitely deeper than Syracuse in terms of the quality throughout that roster. Faceoffs, edge, Syracuse. This was close early on in the season, but Duke has been struggling as they've been getting deeper into their schedule here at the faceoff X a little bit. So I give the edge to Syracuse because they have two guys that are facing off and winning faceoffs at a good clip. Varello, who's now kind of taken a back seat, he's in the 55 range, I believe, and so in the end, I think that both top guys are at about 60% for Duke and Syracuse, but Syracuse has the edge because Duke has fallen off a little bit. Smith has been struggling as of late. Experience, edge Duke. They've got more upperclassmen rocking their midfield than Syracuse does for sure. So overall, once again, I come to the overall edge. Who has the edge? Duke. I don't like it as I sit here hoping, that Syracuse is going to win this game, but Duke definitely overall in terms of depth, overall top end quality. Brendan Curry and Trimboli have been tough, but beyond them, there's just a bunch of guys I think that are over, playing their perceived value. I think Cuse has a lot of overachievers at the midfield, whereas Duke just has achievers, guys that you would have expected to play well, and they've got a lot of attackmen playing midfield as well. So I think the edge goes once again slightly to Duke there. Defensive units, both teams defensively are susceptible to off-ball issues. I know Syracuse has a smart defense. Duke has a very smart and veteran-laden defense as well. And sometimes being smart and then not having that same intelligence all the way through the defensive roster is going to cause off-ball issues. I think that's why you see a lot of teams that have high-end talent. Syracuse with Nick Mellon, Duke with Van Raphorst and Giles Harris. When you have guys like that, they tend to do a little too much. It makes more sense to them overall as they're watching the game play out. They know, hey, I've got to go here. They may go in a scenario in which their teammate doesn't see it the same way they do. And I think that's what creates a lot of off-ball issues for teams that have insanely quality on-ball defenders and just really high IQ defenders to begin with. Talent overall, the edge goes to Duke. They've got Van Raphorst and Giles Harris alone are enough to give them that. I think they're both overall as defenders better than anyone Syracuse has. I think the best on-ball defender in the game is going to be Nick Mellon, but Van Raphorst and Giles Harris, and then what they did last week, scoring goals and assists, I think the edge has to go to Duke there. So we're already through the top three positions, and right now Duke has the edge. Now, if we get to specialty aspects of the game, face-off edge goes to Syracuse, as we had said. Defensive midfield edge, I like Syracuse has a little bit more depth, I think. At long pole, D-mids, they can go too deep. I like Brett Kennedy better than most. He's fast. He puts up points. So I think that in terms of the specialty midfield, I think Syracuse has the slight edge. And then another place Syracuse has the edge is goalie. Syracuse definitely has Drake Porter 55% save percentage versus Turner Upgren's 47%. So Syracuse has the edge in goalie. Porter has been a better ball stopper for sure. Upgren, I think some of his save percentage is a scheme issue. I think that he's a little bit better than that stat indicates, because I think that Duke plays insanely aggressive on defense, which naturally is going to create some of the off-ball issues that I had mentioned. And I think some of that may be by design to try to improve their pace of play without having to rush things on offense. You do that by playing better defense, more aggressive defense, and getting into transition situations. So I think that may play, but I still give Drake Porter the edge over Turner Upgren. And now I get to my final decision, and it pains me. As I look at the final factors, Duke has a clear edge in almost all areas, but there's one area that we haven't talked about: pace of play. As you start getting into the pace of play, and there's a website called lacrossereference.com that I want to go to here, and I'm going to show you the graphic of what I'm looking at right now. If we go through and we compare via their statistics, everything, we see that by their stats, Duke has a stronger schedule. I'd argue that might not be true. Lax ELO ranking, Duke first, Cuse 27th. If you want to get deeper into what these things mean, go to lacrossereference.com and check this website out. It is one of the best analytical sites for the sport of lacrosse out there. They do a ridiculous job of in-game probability, win probability ratings, and things of that sort. So they have these previews with analytics. They have the in-game analytics that adjust on the fly as the game's being played out, and then a post-game wrap-up and things of that sort. They do an incredible job, and we're going to start covering this site a little bit more. But as we get into here, we get into adjusted shooting percentage. Duke beats Syracuse. Adjusted offensive efficiency, 9th to 25th. As you see here, I'm not wrong. Duke, even statistically and analytically, is better than Syracuse on paper everywhere, just across the board. But as we get down to the pace of play, and I pulled these stats off here too, Duke's average possession, 41 seconds. Syracuse's average possession, 47 seconds. And in terms of trend, Syracuse offense has been doing an excellent job of scoring goals and being efficient at the end of these offensive possessions and scoring goals at the end of their shot clocks. So this is going to play where Duke's pace has been picked up a little bit lately. I think that Syracuse's edge in faceoffs is going to play into this because they're going to get a few more possessions. Then I think that Syracuse's ability to take time off the clock without sacrificing offensive efficiency, I think that's going to play into it. And overall, the weather. I think the weather is going to play into Duke's favor. You'd think that Syracuse, the upstate New York team, is going to have the edge there. They don't. They play in the Dome. Duke has played a lot of games on the road. They play a lot of games early where even when they were playing down south, it was still cold as crap. So I think that plays into it a little bit. So in the end, I have to come down to who do I predict in this game. I'm going to make a prediction even though I don't want to. I originally wrote Syracuse by 1. I'm going to, and then I deleted that. And I was rationalizing it and everything, and I was going to explain to you why. And a lot of it's just because Cuse just has that weird thing where they kind of own certain teams and where the the odds are stacked against them, and they somehow end up pulling out weird wins. And I felt like this might be another one of those cases. But the reality, Jamie Trimboli, it's your fault. Jamie Trimboli has scored the game-winning goal against Duke the last 2 seasons, both of them heartbreakers to Duke. He's just, his freshman year, he scored the game winner at the Dome on an outside shot, and then I believe it was last year down at Duke, he scored the game winner off a loose ball. I'll show them to you, even though I think it might get me flagged, and they'll copyright hit me for this video because that one of those highlights is protected. But Trimboli, you beat them twice in the last 2 years, and we did it in odd ways. And I think last year we weren't the better team, and we still won that game on the road nonetheless. I feel like Duke is clearly the better team this year on paper. And even though my heart tells me Syracuse is going to win this game, I think logic tells me that I've got to go with Duke by 1. I don't think that they're going to roll Syracuse, and I think that they're capable of. They are such a good team that if Duke puts it all together and if Syracuse puts it all together, I think Duke's better by 3 to 5 goals. But I think that that's not going to happen. Duke still has to travel. It's still an away game, and I think that Syracuse is that team that plays well when their back's against the wall. So I feel like that it's going to be a close game, but I'm still, sadly, going with Duke by 1.